It was 2007 when renowned documentary filmmaker Ethan Williams and his small crew arrived on the isolated Leskova Island, situated in the icy waters off the coast of Alaska. Their mission was to uncover the truth behind the legends of the Black Ghost, a massive killer orca rumored to be responsible for several unexplained disappearances in the area over the past few decades. The island of Leskova had been home to a small fishing community until the 1970s, when the last residents abandoned it, fleeing in fear after a series of mysterious deaths. The island gained its ominous reputation from that tragic time, with stories of a jet-black orca stalking the icy waters and claiming human lives. As Ethan and his team made camp near the remains of the abandoned village, they felt a palpable sense of dread. Cameraman Jake Roberts shifted uneasily as he filmed the dilapidated buildings overtaken by nature. He muttered that the place gave him the creeps. Ethan simply nodded, his eyes alight with determination. That's why they were there, to shed light on the darkness surrounding this island's past. Over the next few days, they explored the crumbling remains, interviewing marine biologists who spun chilling tales of the legendary Black Ghost. The orca was massive, over 30 feet long and weighing 10 tons. Its black coloration and wicked scars made it unmistakable. More disturbingly, it seemed to hold an inexplicable vendetta against humans. The more Ethan learned, the more obsessed he became with capturing the whale on film. His fixation deeply unsettled Jake and the others, as he planned increasingly risky expeditions to locate the beast. Finally, they set out on a boat to circle the island for several days. Late on the third afternoon, they spotted an onyx dorsal fin cutting through the waves half a mile away. The Black Ghost itself had arrived. Heart-pounding, Jake stared through his viewfinder in awe as the full scope of the monster came into focus, a 40-foot leviathan undulating powerfully through the depths. As it surfaced, its terrible visage breached high above their boat, crude scars marring its obsidian bulk. The whale regarded them silently for a moment, its cold, fathomless eyes seeming to bore into their souls. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it slipped back beneath the inky waves and vanished. That night, shaken by the encounter, Jake begged Ethan to abandon his reckless pursuit of the orca. But the documentary maker's obsession had fully taken hold. Against their protests, he took their boat alone towards a cove where the Black Ghost was rumored to appear, determined to lure it in with a chum slick and capture an attack on camera. Above the cove's dark cliffs, a pale, full moon crested the horizon as Ethan waited alone on the glassy black waters, the chum spreading in thick crimson tendrils around his small boat. After nearly an hour, the first faint ripples disturbed the surface nearby. The Black Ghost had arrived, drawn by the scent. It approached the boat with a nightmarish slowness, its colossal form causing the water to gently rise and fall with each undulation of its powerful tail. Ethan stood transfixed, fumbling with his camera as the whale surfaced barely 20 feet away, its massive jaws unhinged silently, rows of serrated teeth as long as swords glistening in the moonlight. The eyes, cold and intelligent, locked onto Ethan as the beast seemed to regard him for an endless moment simply. Then, without warning, the Black Ghost arched its tremendous bulk and launched itself directly at the boat, its gaping maw eclipsing everything. The camera tumbled into the churning water as the orca's jaws snapped shut with a thunderous crash of splintering fiberglass. The chaos swallowed Ethan's horrified scream as he was flung overboard, disappearing beneath the surface in a froth of thrashing white water. On the cliffside, Jake watched in stunned disbelief as the whale suddenly breached completely, the tattered remains of the boat pinched between its teeth like a toothpick. It seemed to eye them briefly, chillingly, before silently slipping back into the depths. A faint water tread reached their ears as Ethan resurfaced 100 yards away, flailing and gasping for air while clutching the remnants of his shattered camera housing. The team quickly launched a small dinghy and pulled him aboard, shaking and bleeding from a ragged gash on his forehead but miraculously alive. As he clung to them, babbling feverishly, his eyes remained locked on where the whale had vanished. Hours later, after being tended to by the shaken medical officer, Ethan sat hollow-eyed and silent while watching the footage from his ruined camera. The final clip showed only a blur of shadows and rushing water before abruptly cutting to static. Beside him, Jake shook his head slowly in awe and horror. He couldn't believe they were still obsessing over this after that monster almost killed Ethan. Ethan said nothing for a long while, slowly rewinding the footage repeatedly. Finally, he spoke in a hushed tone that there was something unnatural about how it behaved, like it was calculating and intelligent. He turned his hollow gaze towards Jake. The whale was something more. They were the only ones who could expose the truth. In the following days, a deeply shaken crew prepared to depart the nightmarish island, while Ethan pored over lore and records, his obsession renewed with more profound existential conviction. What he found in the historical accounts of the island's indigenous inhabitants raised more questions than answers. The Black Ghost, it seemed, had been revered and feared as a vengeful spirit guardian for centuries before European explorers and whalers arrived. The massive killer whale was depicted in ancient carvings and myths as an eternal, wrathful force defending the island's shores from human encroachment, striking down any who trespassed in its domain. Legends told of long-dead shamans and chieftains forging an unholy pact with the whale, imbuing it with unnatural power and formidable intelligence. In return, the Black Spirit would safeguard their island and visit untold misery upon any who defiled it, claiming their lives for the depths. As it seemed, Ethan became convinced there was a kernel of truth after witnessing the Black Ghost's incredible size and inexplicable malice towards him. Something ancient and supernatural dwelled within the coal-black orca, a rage passed down countless generations. With fervent obsession, he resolved to remain on Leskova and continue pursuing the whale, even after his crew abandoned him for their safety. Week after week, he took to the straits in a tiny rented skiff, enduring fierce storms and privation as he relentlessly scoured the waters. At last, one dim, foggy dawn, he spotted the familiar black shape cutting through the steel-gray swells a half-mile away. Gripping his cameras, Ethan felt a strange sense of certainty, like the conclusion to a mythic epic was finally at hand. Once more, the Black Ghost approached his craft with appalling slowness, revealing its titanic mass as it surfaced not 20 yards away. Its cruel obsidian gaze locked with Ethan's, the weight of eons seeming to pass between them in that moment. As the whale turned its great flank towards his boat, Ethan lifted the lens of his makeshift camera rig closer, his eyes burning with manic desperation behind the viewfinder. With a thunderous explosion of water, the Black Ghost arched its back and raised its gargantuan tail fluke high above the skiff. Ethan stared into the fathomless void of the whale's massive lid-like eye as the colossal mass descended for an endless frozen second. But death did not find Ethan Williams in that infinite roaring void. Just when the obsidian enormity of the Black Ghost's tail seemed primed to extinguish him, a merciful undertow whipped him sideways, and he was expelled from the vortex in a riot of churning froth. He emerged gasping and spluttering, pulled from the brink by sheer chance, or perhaps the whale's inscrutable intentions. His tiny skiff was nowhere to be seen, smashed into oblivion, but Ethan clung desperately to the soggy remnants of his camera housing as his only lifeline. 3 weeks later, a research vessel crew scanning the area for marine life discovered Ethan in a delirious state, drifting in and out of consciousness while lashing at the remnants of his apparatus. When he was finally revived and able to recount his incredible tale, few believed the documentary filmmaker's claims of encountering a supernatural entity that transcended the natural order. Ethan's camera, severely damaged from the incident, contained only brief flashes of distorted footage that could not be enhanced or clarified. Whether it depicted the cosmic players and eldritch vistas that Ethan insisted he witnessed in the Black Ghost's final gesture remained ambiguous. The encounter birthed an obsession more profound than before. Ethan became convinced that the Black Ghost was an avatar of older and more inexplicable forces, entities or presences scattered across the thresholds of our reality, hinted at in primordial myths and outdated cosmologies. In 2004, off the coast of Madagascar, a group of experienced divers prepared for an exciting expedition. On April 12th, they planned to recover a sunken treasure rumored to be hidden in a shipwreck near the remote island of Nosy Be. The team consisted of seasoned diver and leader Sam Turner, marine archaeologist Dr. Lisa Brooks, tech expert Jason Reynolds, and young but skilled diver Emily Carter. The day started with a sense of adventure. The sea was calm and the sky was clear. They loaded their gear onto their Deep Explorer boat and reviewed their plan. The shipwreck, identified through historical records and sonar scans, was believed to hold valuable artifacts and gold. Excitement and anticipation filled the air as they set off toward the site. The waters around Nosy Be were known for their rich marine life, including various species of sharks. Among these, the tiger shark was both feared and respected. Known for its size and strength, the tiger shark could grow up to 16 feet long and had a reputation for being a fierce predator. The divers were aware of the risks but felt prepared for the challenge. They marveled at the clear blue water and the vibrant coral reefs below as they approached the wreck site. The shipwreck lay about 100 feet deep, partially buried in the sand. Sam anchored the boat and the team began their final preparations. They checked their scuba gear, communication devices, and the underwater drone Jason had brought to assist in the search. The dive started smoothly. They descended into the depths, the sunlight filtering through the water, creating a beautiful, serene scene. The wreck came into view, a ghostly silhouette against the sandy bottom. They were in awe of the ship's remnants, a silent testament to history. Dr. Brooks directed the team, pointing out areas to explore and document. Jason piloted the drone, capturing detailed footage of the wreckage. Emily and Sam began searching for the treasure, carefully moving through the debris. They found ancient artifacts, coins, and pottery pieces, all hinting at the ship's storied past. An hour into the dive, they hit the jackpot. Sam uncovered a chest partially buried in the sand. It was old and corroded, but the lock was still intact. They worked together to free it from the wreckage, their excitement growing. The chest felt heavy, a promising sign of its valuable contents. Just as they were about to bring the chest to the surface, Emily noticed a shadow moving in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized it was a massive tiger shark attracted by the commotion. She signaled to the others and they quickly gathered, forming a protective circle around the treasure. The tiger shark moved closer, its powerful body gliding through the water quickly. It was an impressive sight, but its presence filled the team with dread. The shark circled them, its eyes locked onto the divers and the chest. They knew they had to act fast to protect themselves and the treasure. Sam took charge, signaling the team to stay close and remain calm. They slowly ascended, keeping the chest between them and the shark. The shark followed, its curiosity turning into aggression. It made a sudden charge, forcing the divers to scatter. The shark targeted Jason first, sensing his hesitation. It rammed into him, knocking him off balance and causing him to drop the drone. The impact left him dizzy, and he struggled to regain his composure. Sam and Emily quickly intervened, using their spears to keep the shark at bay. The water churned with movement as the shark attacked again. This time it went after Emily, its jaws snapping inches from her leg. She kicked hard, propelling herself away from the predator. Dr. Brooks grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her to safety. The shark circled back, its frustration evident. Jason recovered and rejoined the group, but his leg was bleeding from a scrape against the wreck. The scent of blood drove the shark into a frenzy. It charged once more, and this time, it bit down on Sam's fin, tearing it away. Sam felt a surge of pain but fended off the shark with his spear. Realizing they needed a new plan, Sam signaled the team to ascend faster while keeping the chest secure. They moved as one, their hearts pounding with fear. The shark continued its relentless pursuit, but the divers' coordinated efforts kept it at a distance. The shark made a final desperate attack as they neared the surface. It lunged at Dr. Brooks, who used her spear to strike its sensitive nose. The shark recoiled, giving them the crucial seconds to reach the boat's safety. The team scrambled aboard, breathless and shaken but victorious. On the boat, they swiftly attended to their injuries. Jason's leg was carefully bandaged and Sam's torn fin wetsuit was mended. Despite some damage, the chest remained intact. As they opened it, a treasure trove of gold coins, jewelry, and ancient artifacts was revealed. Their mission was a success, though it came at a significant cost. The team reflected on their ordeal as they sailed back to Nosy Be. The encounter with the tiger shark tested their limits and ability to work together. They had faced a powerful predator and emerged stronger for it. The treasure they recovered was invaluable, not just in monetary terms, but as a piece of history. Dr. Brooks planned to study the artifacts, adding knowledge of the ship's origins and final voyage. The team's story became a legend among divers, a testament to courage and teamwork in the face of danger. Back on land, they were hailed as heroes. The local community celebrated their achievement, recognizing the risks they had taken. Sam, Dr. Brooks, Jason, and Emily formed an unbreakable bond, their shared experience creating a lifelong friendship. In 2008, the waters off Queensland, Australia were bustling with excitement. On August 21st, an international sailing regatta was underway, drawing skilled sailors worldwide. Among the competitors was the crew of the Sea Voyager, a sleek racing boat captained by Peter Collins. His team included First Mate Anna Thompson, navigator Mark Richards, and deckhand James Lee. The day began with perfect sailing conditions. The sun was shining, and a steady breeze promised an excellent race. The Sea Voyager crew was in high spirits as they prepared their boat, checked the sails and rigging, and discussed their strategy. They were determined to perform well in the regatta and had trained hard for this moment. The waters around Queensland were known for their rich marine life, including various species of sharks. Great whites, tigers, and bull sharks were ordinary in the area. While shark attacks on humans were rare, the presence of these predators was always a concern for sailors and swimmers alike. The race started smoothly, with the Sea Voyager gaining an early lead. Peter steered the boat through the waves expertly, while Anna carefully managed the sails. Mark closely watched their position, ensuring they stayed on course. James moved swiftly across the deck, adjusting lines and keeping everything shipshape. A few hours into the race, disaster struck. The Sea Voyager collided with an underwater object, likely a submerged reef or debris. The impact was sudden and violent, throwing the crew off balance. Water began to pour into the hull, and it quickly became clear that the boat was sinking. Peter issued the abandoned ship order, and the crew scrambled to deploy the life rafts. They grabbed supplies, including emergency flares, water, and a radio. Within minutes, the Sea Voyager was lost beneath the waves, leaving the crew adrift in the open ocean. As they floated, trying to regroup and assess their situation, they noticed fins slicing through the water. The sinking boat and the commotion in the water attracted a pack of sharks. The crew's relief at escaping the sinking vessel turned to fear as they realized hungry predators surrounded them. The sharks circled closer, their dorsal fins cutting ominously through the water. The crew's hearts pounded with fear. Peter, staying calm under pressure, instructed everyone to keep their limbs inside the rafts. They used their paddles to fend off the sharks, but the predators grew bolder with each passing minute. One of the sharks rammed James's raft, nearly tipping it over. He gripped the edges tightly, trying to stay calm. In the adjacent raft, Anna threw a paddle at the shark, hitting it on the snout and temporarily driving it away. The situation was dire, and they needed a plan. Mark, the navigator, remembered the emergency flares. He suggested using them to signal for help and scare off the sharks. Peter agreed and retrieved the flares from their emergency kit. They fired one into the sky, hoping a nearby boat would see it. Then they fired another into the water, aiming to deter the sharks. The flares had a temporary effect. The bright light and noise startled the sharks, causing them to scatter. The crew used this brief respite to regroup and discuss their next move. They knew they couldn't rely on the flares alone, and needed to signal for rescue while keeping the sharks at bay. Peter came up with an idea. They could use their sailing gear to create a barrier around the rafts. They tied ropes and sails together, forming a makeshift protective ring. It wasn't much, but it might give them a fighting chance. They worked quickly, knowing the sharks could return at any moment. The sharks soon returned, more aggressive than before. The improvised barrier initially held them off, but the predators began to push through. One shark bit through a rope, causing part of the barrier to collapse. Anna and James fought to repair it, their hands shaking with fear and exhaustion. As the sharks pressed their attack, Peter realized they needed to create a stronger deterrent. He remembered the emergency radio and decided to use it to send out a distress signal. He called for help, describing their location and the dire situation. The response was quick. A rescue boat was on its way, but it would take time to reach them. The crew's spirits lifted slightly, knowing help was on the way. But they still had to survive until then. The sharks continued their relentless assault. bumping and biting at the rafts. One shark managed to get a grip on the side of Mark's raft, tearing a hole in it. Water began to seep in, and Mark fought to keep it afloat. In a desperate move, Peter used the last of their flares to create a diversion. He threw them away from the rafts into the water, hoping to draw the shark's attention. The plan worked momentarily, allowing the crew to repair the damage and secure their barrier. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for rescue. The sharks were relentless, their attacks growing more frenzied. The crew was exhausted, their muscles aching from the constant struggle. Just as they were about to lose hope, they heard the sound of an approaching boat. The rescue vessel arrived, and its crew quickly assessed the situation. They used poles and nets to fend off the sharks, creating a path to the life rafts. The exhausted sailors were pulled aboard one by one, each feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. The sharks, deterred by the larger boat, finally retreated. The Sea Voyager crew collapsed with exhaustion on the rescue boat. They were safe, but the ordeal had left them shaken. Peter thanked the rescuers, his voice filled with gratitude. The sailors were taken to the nearest port, receiving medical attention and a warm welcome from the local community. The story of their harrowing ordeal spread quickly, highlighting both the dangers of the sea and the resilience of those who face them. The crew's quick thinking and teamwork had saved their lives, turning a near tragedy into a story of survival. In 2007, off the coast of New Zealand, a secluded coastal research station stood at the ocean's edge. The station, built on a rocky outcrop, was designed to study the effects of climate change on marine life. On April 15th, the team of scientists at the station was focused on their latest project, monitoring the nighttime activities of aquatic species. The team consisted of Dr. Lisa Henderson, the lead marine biologist, Dr. Mark Edwards, an oceanographer, Emily Parker, a marine technician, and James Lee, a research assistant. The day began with the usual routine. The scientists reviewed their data, calibrated their equipment, and prepared for the nighttime observation. The research station featured an underwater observation dome, a unique structure that allowed the team to observe marine life in its natural habitat without disturbing the environment. The dome was a marvel of engineering, providing a panoramic view of the ocean depths. As evening approached, the team gathered in the observation dome, eager to begin their work. The water outside was dark, and the glow from their equipment cast eerie shadows. They settled in, each taking their position to monitor the various sensors and cameras. The mood was one of quiet excitement, as they hoped to gather valuable data. The waters around New Zealand were home to a diverse range of marine life, including several species of sharks. Great whites, hammerheads, and tiger sharks frequently visited the area. While the scientists were aware of the presence of these predators, the observation dome had always provided a safe vantage point. The team observed various fish and other sea creatures doing nocturnal activities as the night progressed. Suddenly, their equipment detected a large object approaching. The screens showed the unmistakable shape of a great white shark, a frequent visitor to these waters. The shark circled the dome, its curiosity piqued by the lights and movement inside. Dr. Henderson watched the shark with fascination, noting its size and behavior. The team had seen sharks before, but this one seemed particularly interested in the dome. It swam closer, bumping against the glass, causing the structure to shudder slightly. The team exchanged nervous glances but continued their observations. Without warning, the shark rammed the dome with great force. The impact was sudden and violent, causing the glass to crack. Water began to seep in, and alarms blared throughout the station. The team realized they were in grave danger. The dome was compromised and the water level was rising quickly. Panic set in as the scientists scrambled to find a solution. Dr. Edwards quickly assessed the damage and determined that the dome would not hold much longer. They needed to evacuate immediately. Dr. Henderson tried to communicate with the central station, but the impact had damaged their communication systems. Emily Parker, the marine technician, suggested using the emergency escape route, a small hatch that led to the surface. It was their best option, but they had to act fast. The shark, now more aggressive, continued to ram the dome, each hit causing more water to flood in. The team gathered their essential equipment and moved towards the escape hatch. The water level was rising rapidly, and they had to wade through the knee-deep water to reach the hatch. James Lee struggled with the hatch's mechanism, his hands trembling with fear and urgency. Finally, the hatch opened, and the team began to climb out one by one. Dr. Henderson was the last to leave, ensuring everyone else was safe. Just as she was about to climb through, the shark struck again, breaching the weakened dome. Water surged in, knocking her off her feet and pulling her back. Outside, Dr. Edwards saw the chaos below and climbed back to help. He grabbed Dr. Henderson and pulled her towards the hatch. The shark's fins sliced through the water, a stark reminder of their peril. They both struggled but made it through the hatch, securing it behind them with a final push. On the surface, the team gasped for breath, their hearts racing from the near-death experience. The central station, alerted by the alarms, had already launched a rescue operation. A small rescue boat arrived within minutes, and the team was quickly pulled aboard. As they sailed back to the central station, the reality of their ordeal sank in. They had narrowly escaped a deadly situation, and the research dome was likely beyond repair. The team was shaken but grateful to be alive. Back at the central station, they were greeted by the station's director, who had been anxiously awaiting their return. The director praised their quick thinking and teamwork, undoubtedly saving their lives. Medical personnel checked them for injuries, and while they were all exhausted and bruised, they had no severe injuries. The following days were filled with debriefings and plans to salvage what they could from the damaged dome. The data they had collected before the attack was intact, providing valuable insights into the shark's behavior. The team analyzed the footage, noting the shark's unusual aggression and the events that led to the breach. News of the incident spread quickly, drawing attention to the importance of marine research and the challenges scientists face. The team's bravery and quick thinking were praised, and their work gained support from the scientific community and the public. It was a warm summer evening in July 2012 at the Miami Seaquarium, one of Florida's most renowned marine life parks. The massive amphitheater was packed to capacity, buzzing with excited energy as families and tourists eagerly awaited the start of the park's iconic orca show. At the center of it all was Jackson Briggs, the charismatic head trainer who had been with the Seaquarium for over 15 years. A living legend in the industry, Jackson's effortless rapport with the park's orcas, or killer whales, made him a fan favorite and a frequent feature on marine documentaries. That night's performance held special significance. Jackson was set to unveil an all-new routine with Kayla, a massive 7,000-pound female orca recently captured off the coast of Iceland. Renowned for her erratic behavior and stubborn streak, Kayla had proven a challenge even for Jackson's well-honed skills. As the lights dimmed and the opening fanfare blared, Jackson strode into the spotlighted center ring, microphone in hand. His trademark megawatt grin was displayed as he whipped the crowd into a frenzy, exclaiming if they were ready for one whale of a show. The crowd erupted in raucous cheers and applause. After basking in their adulation for a few moments, Jackson continued that they were in for a treat by introducing an all-new routine featuring their recently acquired orca Kala. A hush fell over the audience when they mentioned the whale's name. Kayla's tremendous size and ferocious temperament were well known. The pool's surface suddenly erupted in an explosive cascade as if on cue. Kayla breached utterly, clearing the water by several feet before crashing back down thunderously, sending shockwaves rippling across the amphitheater. The audience sat awed in silence for a heartbeat, before erupting into rapturous applause and cheers. Jackson grinned, motioning for the crowd to settle down while remarking on Kayla's impressive entrance, saying it was just a taste of what the mammal could do. He then instructed the audience to make noise and revive Kayla for her debut. As the audience obliged with raucous hoots and hollers, the opening beats of a thumping musical track filled the amphitheater. Twin gates slid open, and Jennifer Ramirez and Marcus Coleman emerged riding watercraft. With a roar of their engines, the two staffers took off in tight, dizzying maneuvers across the pool's length. The crowd was whipped into a frenzy, whooping and cheering as they performed daring stunts through Kayla's deadly domain. When it seemed the duo would kick their routine into an even higher gear, a piercing screech split the air as ear-piercing acoustic feedback looped through the speaker system, corrupting the thumping music into an agonizing whine. Almost immediately, Kayla's behavior changed. The massive orca's unblinking eye rolled wildly as she thrashed in apparent agitation or pain. Her graceful motions became violent, choppily surging through the water and causing the jet skis to be buffered perilously. Jackson shouted, panicked orders to cut the music and shut everything off, his voice only adding to the cacophony. Jennifer looked to the trainer in confusion, but Marcus, a 5-year veteran, seemed to sense the danger and gunned his jet ski to put distance between himself and the increasingly enraged behemoth. In a whip-fast motion, Kayla turned and surged directly at Marcus. Her massive jaws unhinged, swallowing his craft nearly whole with one titanic snap. The crowd's cheers turned to shrieks of terror as they glimpsed Marcus being flung lifelessly, leaving a rapidly spreading stain. Jackson screamed into the mic, his face blanched of all showmanship as he told Jennifer to get out of there. But it was too late. Jennifer was struggling to restart her jet ski, its engine clogged and useless. When Kayla turned her sights on her, the young woman didn't have time to scream as the orca's massive jaws engulfed her whole. Her abandoned jet ski spun uselessly in the only remnant of its rider as unrest erupted in the amphitheater, the crowd scrambling in blind terror. Jackson froze on his pedestal, a look of terror on his face, as Kayla turned her dead-eyed stare towards him. Twin lines of bloody foam dripped from her macabre jaws as she issued a low, rumbling trumpet, as if saying he was following. A primal shiver of terror lanced up Jackson's spine. He spun and ran from the pedestal as fast as he could, making a beeline for the emergency bulkhead as panels slid open and crews rushed to deploy safety netting and rescue teams. But Kayla was having none of it. With a surprisingly deft flick of her flukes, she sent a powerful shockwave rippling across the surface, sweeping personnel off their feet as jets of water fueled by her mass and power lanced into their midst. Jackson reached the bulkhead, fumbling with shaking hands for the emergency lever as the tsunami-like swell battered the gate behind him. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw Kayla surging towards him with blind, remorseless hunger. The safety bulkhead groaned open with agonizing slowness to reveal the drained emergency tank. But Jackson had no chance to react before Kayla's mass slammed into him, sending him flying through the air to strike the tank's surface with bone-crushing force before plunging into its shallow waters, surrounded by a halo of darkness. When Jackson's vision finally cleared, he glimpsed the looming horror of Kayla's mass descending upon him in the enclosed tank, as emergency crews and civilians alike looked on helplessly. Trapped, broken, and slowly drowning beneath Kayla's bulk, Jackson awaited the inevitable with surprising calm, his final thoughts regretting the hubris of thinking these mighty beasts could ever bend to humanity's will. In the aftermath, footage ricocheted around the internet and news, providing a harsh rebuke and reminder of the risks in blurring entertainment with dominion over intelligent beings that can never be truly tamed. The seaquarium fought to remain open and restore its reputation. Still, a cultural tide against the captivity of orcas had begun to surge, making the events a symbol for the cause. Within 2 years, the iconic park shuttered, and its orcas retired to sanctuaries where such deadly showmanship could never occur again. Only Kayla remained in captivity. Her final fate was a grim shadow of the lucrative entertainment spectacles she resisted. For some, wild spirits must forever remain unbroken no matter the cost. In the chilly waters off the Alaskan coast in the spring of 2009, a research vessel called the SS Ballina carried a team of marine biologists to monitor the annual migration of a gray whale pod. Led by Dr. Samantha Collins, a veteran cetacean expert, the crew hoped to gather valuable data on the whale's behaviors and patterns. As the majestic creatures began their northward journey, Collins and her team tracked them from the boat, their excitement palpable. The marine biologists used hydrophones and video drones to closely observe the massive mammals without disturbing them. But on the third day of observations, the team witnessed something highly unusual and unsettling. An orca had infiltrated the pod. The massive killer whale, over 25 feet long, shadowed the gray whales, fixated on separating a young calf from its mother. Jake Reynolds, Collins's research assistant, gasped as he remarked that he had never seen orcas preying on other whales like this before, as he thought they mainly stuck to seals and smaller prey. Their initial shock quickly escalated to alarm as the orca launched a sudden aggressive attack, targeting a lone calf. The scene turned chaotic, with the ocean frothing white and red as the predator relentlessly tore into the young whale, leaving a harrowing spectacle of nature's raw ferocity. The researchers stared in horrified silence until the orca finally surfaced. The enormous pale body dappled in the calf's lifeblood. But instead of rejoining its pod that had been watching from afar, the killer whale turned its cold black eye towards the ballena. Collins murmured in dread that it seemed the orca saw them as a threat now, possibly competition for the kill. The orca surged directly toward the research vessel with a powerful kick of its flukes. Reynolds hit the engine throttle as Collins shouted orders. But even at top speed, the ungainly ship couldn't out even at top speed and the orca's merit-wasting velocity. The great white beast launched over the stern in a colossal arching breach. Jaws unhinged to reveal rows of vicious teeth. It crashed on the aft deck, smashing equipment and leaving a trail of grisly refuse in its wake as the panicked crew scattered. Collins shouted at the helmsman Jones to bring them about and get them out of there. Risking their lives in the churning wake, 2 deckhands pushed the hydrographic drones overboard as sacrificial ballast, hoping to distract the orca. The ploy worked briefly as the ravenous killer peeled away to pulverize the drones, but it rapidly refocused its insatiable hunting rage on the fleeing ship. The orca matched their every turn with almost sentient anticipation, cutting off any chance at escape as it toyed with them like a cat pursuing a mouse. At one point, the research vessel was boxed in by sheer cliff walls on one side and the orca on the other. With sickening realization, Collins recognized this as the same narrow fjord where the whale migration had been funneled and corralled. She cried out in dismay that it was hurting them, just like with the pod, and that it saw them as prey. The biologists braced for the final attack as the orca launched in a vertical slap of the ship's hull. The loud impact sprayed them with icy runoff as the vessel rocked precariously. But as the killer whale prepared to deliver the coup de grace, the gray whale pod appeared on the horizon. Perceiving her kind approaching, the killer whale abruptly abandoned its hunt for the research ship, veering off to rejoin the herd it had briefly turned against. Badly shaken, the ballena crew returned to port. Though they had gathered vital intelligence on the orca's here-own hunting tactics, the grim, harrowing ordeal made them wonder. Had they perhaps witnessed the last migration before human and orca predations rendered the whales extinct altogether? As Collins disembarked on shaky legs, she could only hope their research proved worthwhile in illuminating such mortal ecological threats to these giants of the sea. If another confrontation like that ever occurred, she worried no humans might be left to document the tragic phenomenon. Beneath the starlit sky, the Maldivian sea shimmered with an ethereal glow. 5 tourists had ventured into this underwater dreamscape, eager to witness the famed bioluminescence themselves. It was December 5, 2001. A night dive promised the otherworldly experience only found deep beneath the waves. Leading the group was Nadia, a seasoned dive master with an infectious passion for the ocean. Having grown up on these islands, the sea was her backyard, its mysteries and rhythms woven into her very being. Tonight, excitement coursed through her veins. Bioluminescence was unpredictable. Sharing this phenomenon with newcomers was always a thrill. A young British couple, Emily and Ben, were among the tourists on their honeymoon. Their shared fascination with the natural world had drawn them to the Maldives, a wedding gift more precious than anything else on their registry. Then there was Marcus, a middle-aged German photographer hoping to capture the bioluminescence on film. His worn camera bag and waterproof flashlight hinted at a life spent chasing elusive images. And finally, Priya, an Indian marine biology student whose wide eyes betrayed her mix of awe and nerves. This was her first night dive, a thrilling and slightly terrifying step into the field she dreamed of working in one day. The day she had been spent with meticulous preparation. Nadia checked and rechecked gear, explaining the dive plan in precise detail. Emily and Ben experienced divers themselves and absorbed everything with enthusiasm. Marcus peppered Nadia with questions about the best lighting techniques for underwater photography, while Priya clung to Nadia's every word, her fingers nervously adjusting her mask. As the sun descended, casting long shadows across the white sand beach, they boarded the dive boat. Laughter mingled with nervous chatter as the small vessel chugged away from the resort's twinkling lights. They donned wetsuits out on the open water, the neoprene a warm hug against the evening chill. One by one, they strapped on weight belts and air tanks, the familiar clinking of metal a rhythmic pre-dive ritual. Finally, the moment had arrived. Standing at the boat's edge, their hearts pounding, they took that giant leap into the unknown. Bubbles fizzed around them as they descended, the last remnants of daylight filtering through the crystal-clear water. With a flick of a switch, Nadia turned on her dive light. Specks of blue swirled in the beam, an electrifying display of nature's magic. The group gasped in unison, mesmerized by the underwater fireworks. They followed Nadia, more bottomless, their movements stirring more vibrant bursts of light. Emily and Ben reached out, hands brushing amidst the glittering clouds. This was a moment they'd treasure forever. They didn't know that the bioluminescence had attracted more than just wonderstruck humans. Tiger sharks, known to prowl these waters, honed in on the disturbance. Unlike reef sharks, which are often timid, tigers are curious apex predators, and their keen senses detect potential prey lurking in the darkness. A surge of panic ripped through Nadia as the truth dawned on her. Those weren't just curious sharks, they were hunting. One in particular, bolder than the rest, accelerated towards the group. Nadia reacted instinctively, shoving Priya and Marcus further behind her while she flailed her dive light in the approaching shark's direction. For a split second it seemed startled, then attacked again with renewed aggression. Instinct took over. Nadia charged the tiger head-on, a desperate attempt to scare it off. Its razor-lined mouth gaped open inches from her outstretched hand, then a solid thud. The shark veered sideways, its momentum thrown off course. Armed with his camera pole, Ben had jabbed the shark forcefully on its sensitive snout. Seeing her husband's bravery, Emily frantically signaled to the others to start their emergency ascent. They kicked furiously upwards, the bioluminescence a swirling cloud of light around them, like a shroud painting them as targets. The sharks, momentarily disoriented, circled beneath, their movements growing more agitated. One peeled off from the others and shot upwards with alarming speed. Its target was Priya, lagging slightly behind. Nadia screamed, an underwater cry muffled by her regulator. But there was no time to react. The shark lunged and Priya disappeared in a swirl of sand and dark blood. Terror turned to rage. Nadia, Ben, and Marcus reached the surface, gasping for breath. Emily, however, was nowhere to be found. Panic threatened to overwhelm them, the boat a distant speck against the vast night sea. And beneath the waves, shadows moved. Nadia forced herself back underwater, her eyes scanning desperately for any sign of Emily. Then she saw her. Emily was entangled in a discarded fishing net, the tiger shark circling with predatory intent. It lunged, and Emily thrashed helplessly against the nylon trap. With a surge of adrenaline, Nadia swam towards her friend, dive knife drawn. In the frantic fight that followed, time seemed to distort. She slashed at the shark and at the net, Emily's wide eyes mirroring her terror. Finally, with a desperate swipe, the net tore. Kicking with all their might, Nadia and Emily surfaced, dragging each other to the boat like debris after a shipwreck. Hauling themselves aboard, they collapsed on the deck, sobs mixing with the frantic explanations for the horrified boat crew. Still in a frenzy from the hunt, the tiger sharks seemed reluctant to give up their prey. They circled the boat, their fins slicing through the moonlit water. It took an agonizing hour, the crew flashing emergency strobes and making as much noise as possible, before the sharks finally disappeared into darkness. The aftermath was a numb blur. The Coast Guard arrived, their questions jarring. Marcus sat hunched over, his precious camera abandoned beside him. Ben held Emily, both shaking uncontrollably. Nadia, bruised and aching, was a shell of her former self. Guilt gnawed at her. She should have seen the signs and aborted the dive earlier. Yet she also knew the unpredictable savagery of the ocean. Sometimes nature played by its own rules, and humans were merely pawns in the struggle for survival. As dawn broke, painting the sky in streaks of soft pink, the rescue vessel chugged back into port. Priya's body was never recovered. The bioluminescence had faded, leaving behind only the harsh light of day and the unbearable reality of a dream holiday turned nightmare. For the survivors, the sea would never hold the same magic again. Haunted by the shadows in the depths, they were forever marked by the night the ocean bared its teeth. The early morning light shimmered on the Pacific Ocean, turning the waves off Maui's northern coast into molten gold. 5 surfers bobbed on their boards, waiting for the perfect set. It was January 10th, 2005, and the thrill of an early swell had pulled them out of bed hours ago. Among them was Kai, a Hawaiian native who'd grown up riding these waves. Surfing was his religion, the ocean his sanctuary. His days revolved around the tide charts, and nothing beat the rush of dropping into a glassy barrel. Today he was joined by his best friend, Jake, a mainland transplant with an infectious enthusiasm for all things surf-related. Emily, Jake's girlfriend, was just a little behind in skill. Her competitive spirit pushed her to try boulder maneuvers. Rounding out the crew were 2 seasoned local surfers, Tomas and Makoa, whose deep-set eyes scanned the horizon with the quiet alertness of men intimately familiar with the sea's unpredictable moods. The morning started with laughter and friendly competition. They took turns riding the waves, whooping in appreciation of each other's skills. There was a camaraderie among surfers, a bond forged in the shared understanding of nature's power. But the ocean was a fickle beast, and its beauty could mask hidden dangers. Great white sharks weren't common in these waters, but weren't unheard of either. Attracted by warmer currents and abundant food sources, these apex predators were known to roam the vast Pacific. And today, one had found its way to this seemingly idyllic surf spot. Kai was the first to sense something was wrong. A shift in the current, a ripple of unease that washed over him with the chill of a sudden drop in temperature. He saw the other surfers fall silent, their easy banter replaced by a shared wariness. Then there it was, a massive dorsal fin slicing through the water, cutting an ominous course directly towards their little group. Their carefree morning was shattered in an instant. Kai's survival instincts, honed by years spent in the ocean, kicked in. He paddled frantically toward shore, yelling at the others to do the same. Every fiber of his being screamed that escape was their only chance. Emily and Jake followed without question, adrenaline propelling their frantic strokes. But Thomas and Makoa, perhaps out of bravado or disbelief, hesitated. It was a decision that would change everything. The great white surged forward with breathtaking speed, breaching the surface in an explosion of water. Its target was Thomas, frozen in the path of the oncoming predator. Makoa, with a desperate shout, flung himself towards his friend, shoving him out of harm's way with seconds to spare. But the shark, disoriented by the sudden change of target, wheeled back, its massive jaws finding their mark. Makoa's scream cut through the air, followed by a sickening gurgle as he was dragged underwater. The ocean churned crimson, the sight a brutal reminder of the shark's power. Tomas, still reeling from his narrow escape, thrashed towards the safety of the shore, a primal terror spurring him on. Meanwhile, Kai, Emily, and Jake had made it halfway across the treacherous stretch of open water, separating them from the beach. They paddled in unison, hearts pounding in their chests. Their boards seemed pitifully small now against the ocean's vastness, and their escape route felt impossibly long. The shark, having consumed its gruesome meal, was still hungry. It honed in on the fleeing surfers, a relentless hunter unwilling to relinquish its prey. Kai knew their only hope lay in reaching shallower water, where the shark's maneuverability would be limited. He urged the others on, his voice hoarse with fear and exertion. Then Emily made a fatal mistake. Panic overtaking her, she abandoned her steady paddling and started kicking wildly. The frantic movements drew the shark's attention like a beacon. It changed course, homing in on her with terrifying speed. Jake watched in horror as the massive shape shot up from below. In a horrifying display of raw power, the shark breached, snatching Emily from her surfboard. She vanished in a flurry of white water, her agonized scream piercing the air before it was brutally cut off. Jake was overwhelmed by a gut-wrenching mix of grief and terror, causing him to freeze. His surfboard became a lone target in the hunting grounds. Kai, however, snapped back to survival mode. With a surge of adrenaline, he paddled toward Jake, shouting at him to snap out of his daze. Reaching his friend, Kai physically propelled Jake's board towards the shore, knowing every second counted. As though disoriented by witnessing 2 attacks in quick succession, the shark hesitated. Yet the smell of blood and its insatiable hunger kept it circling. Kai and Jake were agonizingly close to shore, but the shark was between them and safety. In a desperate gamble, Kai jumped off his board, sacrificing himself as a distraction. He kicked wildly, creating as much chaos as possible, hoping to draw the predator's attention. It worked. The shark veered towards Kai, its massive form a monstrous silhouette in the churning water. Miraculously, Kai managed to dive under just before the gigantic jaws snapped shut. Feeling the turbulence and blinded by its fury, the shark thrashed. It was enough. Fueled by the terror of losing another friend, Jake reached the shallows. He scrambled onto the sand, collapsing with a mixture of sobs and relieved gasps for air. Kai was still caught in the deadly game out in the deeper water. The shark charged again, and again he dodged. He knew he couldn't outlast the predator forever. His muscles burned, and his lungs screamed for oxygen. Just when all hope seemed lost, a powerful wave broke over them, churning and disoriented the shark long enough for Kai to catch the receding current and body surf his way frantically to shore. He stumbled onto the beach, seconds ahead of the frustrated shark, and crumpled beside Jake. The two men huddled together, shaking uncontrollably as they stared in numb horror at the ocean. The playful waves that had beckoned them that morning now seemed menacing, forever tainted by the bloodshed they had witnessed. With the arrival of rescue boats, the reality of their ordeal sank in. They had survived, but at a terrible cost. From that day on, the ocean would hold a different meaning for them, its power tinged with a respect born of profound fear. For they had looked into the abyss, into the cold eyes of a predator, and they knew the fragility of human life in the face of nature's untamed might. In 2005, the newly opened Paradise Bay Resort on the coast of Fiji promised an unparalleled luxury experience. On November 20th, the resort was bustling with guests eager to enjoy the pristine beaches and the calm waters of the artificial lagoon. The lagoon, designed to be a safe swimming area, was separated from the ocean by a series of barriers that kept wildlife at bay. Among the guests were the Williams family, David, his wife Emma, and their two children, Lily and Jake. They were excited for their vacation, having heard rave reviews about the resort. Also present was Michael Reed, a retired marine biologist who had come to relax and enjoy the tranquility of the resort. The day started perfectly. The sun shone and the lagoon was filled with guests swimming, paddleboarding, and snorkeling. The Williams children were particularly excited, splashing around in the shallow end. Michael was on the beach reading a book, but occasionally glancing up to watch the serene waters. However, the calm was deceptive. Unknown to the guests, a recent storm had damaged part of the barrier, creating a gap large enough for marine life to enter. That morning, a giant bull shark, drawn by the scent of the lagoon's fish, found its way through the breach and into the lagoon. Around midday, the first signs of trouble appeared. Lily and Jake, while snorkeling, noticed a large shadow moving in the deeper part of the lagoon. Curious, they swam closer, but the shadow disappeared. They returned to their parents, excitedly discussing the big fish they had seen. David and Emma, thinking it was just a large fish, decided to snorkel with the children to see it for themselves. Michael, overhearing their conversation, grew concerned. His experience told him that a large shadow in these waters could be more than just a harmless fish. As the Williams family snorkeled, the shadow reappeared, moving swiftly and purposefully. Michael's concern turned to alarm when he saw the unmistakable dorsal fin of a shark. He stood up and shouted, trying to warn the lifeguards and the guests. Panic quickly spread as people realized the danger. The lifeguards sprang into action, whistling and ordering everyone out of the water. Chaos ensued as guests scrambled to get to safety. The shark, now agitated by the commotion, swam towards the shallow end of the lagoon, where the Williams family was still struggling to reach the shore. The bull shark lunged, aiming for Jake, the closest target. Realizing the imminent danger, David grabbed his son and tried to shield him. The shark bit down David's leg, its mighty jaws cutting deep. He screamed in pain, but his primary concern was getting his family to safety. Emma, terrified, managed to pull Lily to the shore, where Michael and other guests helped them out of the water. The lifeguards rushed to assist David and Jake. One lifeguard, Tom, bravely entered the water with a pole, attempting to fend off the shark. Despite his age, Michael joined in, using his knowledge of sharks to direct Tom on handling the predator. They managed to distract the shark long enough for David and Jake to be pulled to safety, but David was bleeding heavily. The resort's medical team quickly attended to David's wounds. trying to stop the bleeding and stabilize him. Emma and the children were in shock, clinging to each other and watching the scene unfold. The other guests, though safe on the shore, were in a state of panic, unsure of what would happen next. The resort's manager, Sarah Lawson, realized they needed to act fast to restore order and ensure no further attacks. She contacted local marine authorities and explained the situation. They advised closing the lagoon and sent a team of experts to capture the shark and assess the damage to the barrier. As the experts arrived, they coordinated with Michael, who offered his expertise. They set up a plan to safely capture the shark and repair the breach in the barrier. Using a combination of nets and bait, they lured the shark into a confined lagoon area. It was a tense operation, but they captured the shark after several hours without further incident. With the shark secured, the team focused on repairing the barrier. They worked through the night, ensuring the lagoon would again be safe for guests. The resort staff remained vigilant, assisting the guests and providing updates on the situation. David was taken to the nearest hospital, where he underwent surgery to treat his leg injuries. The doctors were optimistic about his recovery, but it would take time. Emma and the children stayed by his side, grateful he was alive and receiving the needed care. The following day, the resort told the guests what had happened and the steps taken to ensure their safety. Sarah personally met with many guests, including the Williams family, offering apologies and support. She assured them the resort would cover all medical expenses and provide accommodations until David was ready to travel. Though shaken, the guests appreciated the resort staff and marine experts' swift and professional response. The lagoon remained closed for several days while thorough inspections and additional reinforcements were made to the barriers. As the days passed, the resort slowly returned to normal. The guests resumed their activities with a heightened awareness of their surroundings. Once David was stable enough to travel, the Williams family cut their vacation short, but left with a deep appreciation for the bravery and kindness shown to them. It was the summer of 2016 when a team of marine biologists from the University of Cambridge ventured into the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean, just off the rugged coast of Svalbard, Norway. Their mission was to conduct an ecological survey on the region's unique marine life, studying orcas' behavior and migration patterns, also known as killer whales. The research team was led by the experienced Dr. Elizabeth Finley, a seasoned marine biologist with over 2 decades of fieldwork. The team included Dr. Finley's research and 3 field technicians, Julia Harding, Diego Ramirez, and Liam O'Connor. As their sturdy research vessel, the RV Nautilus powered through the chilly Arctic waves, the team eagerly prepared their equipment to immerse themselves in the raw, unforgiving beauty of the Arctic wilderness. Little did they know that this routine expedition was about to take a terrifying turn that would test the limits of their survival instincts and forever change their perception of the creatures they studied. The first few days went smoothly, with the team documenting marine species and collecting data. However, as they navigated through dense ice floes on the 4th day, an eerie silence fell upon the icy expanse. Elizabeth noticed that the hydrophones were not picking up any whale vocalizations and remarked with concern that it was as if they had all gone silent. Elizabeth frowned, scanning the frozen landscape uneasily. She thought that it was odd since orcas were highly vocal creatures, especially during their hunting periods. Suddenly, a distant splashing caught their attention. Julia gasped while peering through her binoculars and told Dr. Finley she might want to look at something. Elizabeth swiftly grabbed the binoculars, and what she saw made her blood run cold. A massive orca over 30 feet long was violently thrashing in the water, its powerful tail thunderously slapping the surface. Elizabeth breathed tremblingly. She murmured that she had never seen an orca that size before. The colossal creature continued its frenzied display, its cavernous maw gaping open to reveal razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly it turned its massive head towards their vessel, locking its cold, soulless gaze upon them. Elizabeth shouted at them to be cautious, but it was too late. With incredible speed and agility defying its size, the orca propelled itself at the RV Nautilus, crashing into the hull with freight train force. The violent impact sent a shockwave through the vessel, knocking the team down and sending equipment flying. Diego cried out in terror, asking what in God's name that was. Elizabeth struggled to her feet, her heart pounding. She told them tremblingly that the orca had just rammed them and ordered everyone to grab a life vest and prepare to abandon the ship. A loud groan echoed through the hull as if on cue, and the RV Nautilus began violently listing to one side. Without wasting another second, the team scrambled towards the life rafts, their training kicking in. They leaped into the icy waters one by one, clinging to the bright orange rafts as the RV Nautilus slowly slipped beneath the waves to its final resting place among the ice floes. Elizabeth called out to check if everyone was accounted for as she scanned the bobbing rafts. A chorus of affirmations answered her, but as she counted faces, her heart sank. Liam was missing. She repeatedly shouted Liam's name, asking where he was across the expanse. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. They turned to see Liam thrashing in the water, his face twisted in agony as the massive orca clamped its jaws down on his leg, slowly dragging him under. Julia screamed rawly in horror. The team could only watch helplessly as the orca toyed with its prey, its bulk disappearing and reappearing in the crimson-tinged waters. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the thrashing stopped and the Arctic fell silent again, save for gentle waves lapping the ice. Tears streamed down Julia's face as she clutched her life vest, her body racked with sobs. She asked in a trembling voice why the orca did that. Elizabeth could only shake her head, eyes haunted. She whispered hoarsely that she didn't know, but they needed to get to safety before the creature returned. With heavy hearts, the team paddled towards the nearest ice floe, hauling themselves onto the frozen surface. Exhaustion and shock set in as they huddled together, seeking warmth in each other's embrace. Hours passed as the Arctic sun dipped, casting long shadows across the ice. Suddenly, a distant splashing echoed through the silence, and Elizabeth's head snapped up, her eyes widening in horror. She breathed inaudibly, shouting that the orca was back. Sure enough, the massive orca cut through the water towards them, its sleek dark form effortlessly powerful. But this time its movements seemed calculated, almost predatory. Elizabeth whispered to them to stay still and not make a sound, her heart pounding. The team froze, breath shallow and rapid, as the orca drew nearer and nearer, dwarfing their tiny forms. Just when they thought it would pass them by, the orca suddenly changed course, heading straight for their fragile refuge. Its immense body slammed into the ice floe with a sickening crack, sending massive shards flying everywhere. Elizabeth shouted through the chaos for them to run and get to higher ground. The team scrambled across the rapidly disintegrating ice, feet slipping and sliding as they desperately sought purchase. But as they neared a larger, stable floe, the orca struck again, its massive tail sweeping across the ice and sending Diego tumbling into the freezing waters. Before anyone could react, the orca was upon Diego, its cavernous maw stretching open to deliver the final lethal strike. In a split second, Elizabeth grabbed a nearby ice pick and hurled it with all her might. The sharp tool whistled through the air, striking the orca squarely in the eye. The creature let out a loud bellow of pain, its massive body thrashing violently and spraying icy shards everywhere. Elizabeth screamed for them to run, her voice barely audible over the orca's agonized cries. Without hesitation, the team scrambled across the ice, hearts pounding as they distanced themselves from the enraged Leviathan. Finally, after the frantic flight, they reached a large, stable ice floe, hauling themselves onto its frozen surface and collapsing in exhausted heaps. Elizabeth panted, sweeping her eyes over the battered, bruised faces and asking if everyone was okay. Nods and murmurs answered her, but relief was short-lived. A distant splashing echoed, and they turned to see the orca, the eye now swollen and bleeding, slowly making its way toward them once more. Julia whispered tremblingly that it was not giving up. Elizabeth's heart sank, watching the relentless creature draw nearer as the harsh Arctic sapped its strength. Elizabeth watched in horror as the massive orca turned its sights on Julia next. The young woman scrambled across the ice, screaming in terror, but her desperate movements only seemed to spur on the predator. With a powerful thrust of its tail, the orca launched itself from the water, its upper body clearing the ice floe entirely. Julia tried to veer away but slipped, falling hard. The orca was upon her in that split second, cavernous jaws unhinged and gaping wide. It was over in seconds. Julia's lifeless form going limp as the dark waters rapidly stained crimson. Elizabeth could only watch in shocked stillness as the horror that happened in less than 5 minutes unfolded before her, unable to process the savage brutality she had just witnessed. The orca resurfaced, seeming to fix its cold, implacable stare directly on Elizabeth. It opened its bloodied jaws, issuing a low, reverberating bellow, like a chilling warning from the depths. To her horror, Elizabeth found the monster was slowly bearing down on her position, cutting through the waves with terrifying ease. Her breath came in panicked gasps, limbs trembling, unable to run or even move from sheer primal fear. Just as the orca was nearly upon her, smashing through the ice mere yards away, a deafening thundercrack split the air overhead. A helicopter emblazoned with a Norwegian research station logo zinged into view, downdrafts swirling clouds of blinding snow. The orca immediately abandoned its pursuit, slipping beneath the reddened surface and vanishing from sight. Fighting panic, Elizabeth held up her arms to signal as the chopper hovered above, the winch line dropping to haul her aboard. In the following weeks, Elizabeth's dreams were plagued by visions of orcas, always pursuing, always striking without warning, with cold, intelligent eyes observing dispassionately as they claimed their victims. As soul-withering as her experience had been, it was evident that the implacable orca's throwdown challenge had irrevocably altered her. The old Elizabeth was gone forever, reborn as something far harder and more unyielding, a new creature forged in Arctic cruelty. In 2011, the Richards family, comprised of husband Eric Richard, wife Samantha, and their 2 children Lily and Thomas, decided to embark on a sailing vacation off the picturesque coast of New Zealand's South Island. After extensive planning and preparation, they chartered a 42-foot sailboat named the Avalon from a reputable local company in the coastal town of Kaikoura. Kaikoura boasted incredible marine life and a pristine natural environment. The nutrient-rich waters surrounding the town attracted many species, including whales, dolphins, seals, and occasionally orcas or killer whales. For the Richards family, who were passionate sailors and marine enthusiasts, the opportunity to observe these magnificent creatures up close was irresistible. As the Avalon sailed smoothly through the gentle swells under clear blue skies, the sense of liberation from their daily routines enveloped them. Eric skillfully maneuvered the sails and rigging, while Samantha prepared a light picnic lunch in the cabin below deck. Their adventurous 12-year-old daughter Lily eagerly scanned the horizon with her binoculars, while young Thomas played contentedly with his action figures in the cockpit. It appeared to be another perfect day in paradise, with only the calls of seabirds and the rhythmic sound of waves against the hull as background noise. However, the first hint that something was wrong soon emerged. Lily's voice echoed from the bow, drawing Eric's attention to see something. His eyes widened excitedly when he spotted the dark shapes breaking the water's surface. He signaled his wife to get the camera, believing they had gotten orcas approaching. The entire family gathered at the railings in moments, marveling as a large pod of orcas emerged from the depths, their distinctive black and white markings shimmering in the sunlight. The creatures began to playfully interact with the boat, rolling and leaping partially out of the water in a breathtaking display. Looking at the size of an orca male, Eric pointed to an exceptionally massive orca as it gracefully breached the waves. It was an incredible sight. Laughing joyfully, Samantha attempted to capture the moment with a flurry of camera snaps, while Thomas bounced excitedly. Even Lily, typically reserved, was captivated by the spectacle. But as quickly it appeared, Eric began to sense something was amiss. One of the more giant orcas, a massive bull, had broken away from the pod's playful antics and was now circling the Avalon in a slow, ominous orbit. Samantha observed hesitantly, voicing her husband's concerns that the orca seemed agitated. Before Eric could respond, the bull orca charged at the boat head-on, colliding with the bow with a powerful impact that sent the Avalon lurching to one side. Lily was thrown off her feet, but Eric managed to grab her by her life vest before she could fall overboard. As the other orcas swiftly departed, leaving the belligerent male behind, the family found themselves alone in the open ocean. Night fell rapidly, a sense of dread settling over them. The bull orca relentlessly attacked the Avalon for 2 hours, ramming it repeatedly while Eric struggled to maintain control and prevent it from capsizing. The impacts caused significant damage to the hull, causing the boat to take on water with each passing minute. Just as the family contemplated abandoning the ship, a horrifying sound pierced the darkness, the loud bang of the orca breaching fully from the water. With a thunderous crash, the massive creature slammed onto the Avalon, shattering the deck and snapping the mast before disappearing beneath the waves. The boat began to sink rapidly, and Eric managed to send a distress call before the radio malfunctioned. Within minutes, the sailboat capsized utterly. The Richards family clung to the overturned hull as the orca circled nearby, trapping them in the frigid water. Eric urged them not to panic or make sudden movements as they struggled to stay afloat. Over the following hours, the nightmare continued. Too exhausted to swim to the life rafts, they remained on the hull, taking turns resting and trying to conserve their energy. At one point, the bull orca approached them, breaking a section of the hull and causing deadly shards of fiberglass to scatter in the water. Eric felt a sharp pain in his ribs as a shard sliced into him, but he remained silent, not wanting to attract the orca's attention. Only once did the orca breach near them, drenching them with cold water before disappearing again into the depths. As the hours passed, their strength waned, and they clung to hope of rescue. When dawn finally arrived, they spotted a ship approaching, a whale-watching charter vessel returning to port. Eric shouted weakly for help as the vessel's searchlight scanned the area. But the orca, realizing its time was running out, made one final desperate attempt to attack them. With a massive breach, it aimed for the family, and in a split-second decision, Eric pushed his wife and children away as the orca destroyed what remained of their refuge. When rescue teams finally arrived, they found Samantha, Lily, and Thomas clinging together with Eric, trying to float from a distance, traumatized but alive. Eric's sacrifice and injuries were evident as he was pulled from the water. In the aftermath, the Richards family's ordeal made international headlines, sparking debates about orcas' behavior. The experience shattered their romanticized view of the ocean, replacing wonder with terror. The family members struggled to come to terms with their harrowing ordeal, haunted by the memory of that nightmare off the coast of New Zealand. In the summer of 2003, a deep-sea salvage operation was underway off the coast of Hawaii to investigate the wreckage of a sunken World War II-era naval vessel. The submarine Perseverance, captained by 45-year-old Marcus Boone, had been contracted to explore and retrieve artifacts from the debris field. The crew of 6 experienced divers descended over 2,000 feet beneath the surface in the advanced submersible. They maneuvered carefully through the precarious field as they needed. Boone told his crew over the comm that they should make it a quick sweep, as he didn't want to linger in that junkyard graveyard longer than necessary. The divers fanned out, using grapnels and robotic arms to dislodge and collect any items of potential historical value: weaponry, dishes, personal effects. But as they pulled at the deteriorated wreckage, something massive began to stir within the mangled hull. A low groan echoed through the craft as the hull shifted unnaturally. Sarah Davies, the youngest crew member, exclaimed in shock at the unsettling sound. Before anyone could react, an immense dark shape exploded outwards from the ruins, shattering decades of sediment across the wreck. The divers instinctively squeezed the thruster controls, propelling them backward as the apparition took form. It was an orca, but larger than any on record. At least 35 feet long and shockingly muscular, its black and white coloration seemed scorched in the sublights, mottled with age and scarred from a lifetime of battles merely hinted at. The behemoth circled the submersible at ramming speed, its immense jaws gnashing mere feet from the acrylic hull. Davies couldn't help but scream as the orca fixed them with a furious, surprisingly coherent glare. Boone remarked grimly that he thought they had just woken up an ancient large orca from its cave, and it didn't seem too happy about that. The orca smashed the sub with its powerfully fluked tail, the blow shuddering the craft violently. Metal groaned as the outer hull crumpled slightly against the force of the strike. Davies cried out in panic, asking the captain what they should do. Boone remained outwardly calm, though resolve warred with dread behind his eyes. He stated that they couldn't outrun or outmuscle that monster, but they may be able to outlast it if they took shelter. The orca wheeled around for another punishing strike, but Boone managed to angle the sub until its exposed underbelly wedged into the Rex remains against the seafloor. The hulking orca slammed against the submersible without leaving so much. Still, the furious mammal continued its relentless assault, slamming the crippled vessel over and over with the full brunt of its titanic bulk, determined to eliminate these trespassers from its domain. The crew alternated between tense silence and cries of terror as they rode out the ferocious onslaught that seemed to stretch into infinity. But eventually the deafening impacts grew weaker and more erratic as the orca exhausted itself. Boone finally activated the exterior cameras, showing the once mighty beast drifting lifelessly downwards, its hateful obsidian eyes still fixed on the sub as if daring them to re-emerge. Over 2 days later, after the creature had departed, the crew could finally extricate themselves by firing explosive dislodging charges to break free of the wreck. Battered and shaken, they emerged to the bright Pacific surface, grateful to have survived their deep blue rescue turned nightmare. Davies muttered that she would request hazard pay on any undersea missions featuring cryptozoological megafauna going forward, sparking relieved laughter from the rest of the exhausted crew. As the Perseverance returned to port, none could shake the sense that they had encountered something ancient and unknowable in those crushing depths. A wrathful leviathan older than history itself. A primal force now stirred from uneasy slumbers, watching and waiting in the eternal blackness for warmongering humans to violate its sanctum again. The turquoise waters of South Africa's Umkomaas coast sparkled under the midday sun. This hidden reef was an escape for experienced scuba diver Sarah Makubele, a place of vibrant corals and mesmerizing fish. It was June 12, 1999, and she hoped for an escape from her hectic life on shore. Sarah was a marine biologist by trade, working tirelessly to understand and protect South Africa's diverse marine life. Sharks held a particular fascination for her. Growing up in a landlocked village, the ocean had always felt like a dream. Now she studied those creatures most feared by humankind. Great whites in particular were a paradox majestic hunters, yet vulnerable to overfishing and habitat destruction. Sarah's research was vital, yet funding was scarce. She often was torn between fieldwork and the endless grant applications that kept her work afloat. Today was meant to be different. An anonymous donation had sponsored this expedition, a rare chance to focus solely on observation. Her dive buddy, Thomas, was a seasoned underwater photographer tasked with capturing the elusive beauty of this reef. He was also her partner, the one constant in her whirlwind life. Their shared passion for the ocean deepened their bond, a precious anchor in a chaotic world. Beneath the waves, an entirely different world unfolded. Sarah's cares seemed to dissolve in the blue, her mind settling into a rhythm dictated by the gentle sway of the sea. Sunlight danced on schools of silverfish, their movement like a hypnotic ballet. Thomas signaled nearby, his camera poised. It felt like a charmed day. Unbeknownst to them, another presence lurked in the deeper waters. A great white shark, nearly 5 meters long, had been cruising this territory for days. Food was plentiful, yet a gnawing hunger persisted, a primal drive honed by millions of years of evolution. These waters were its hunting ground, and with an apex predator's instinct, it sensed opportunity in the distance. Sarah's research mind noted the sudden shift in the reef's behavior. The once dazzling fish vanished like a flicked switch, leaving an ominous void. Years of experience told her something was wrong. Thomas focused on his camera, but he had yet to notice the change. Her pulse quickened as a vast shadow appeared from the blue haze. The great white creature sculpted for power was already in attack mode. Misidentifying the diver's silhouettes as prey and driven by overwhelming instinct, it lunged. Time seemed to shatter the moment the shark struck. Sarah had seconds to process the sight of those massive jaws, a yawning maw of razor-sharp teeth. Her survival instincts kicked in, but there was nowhere to run or hide on the open sea floor. The force of the impact was staggering. The shark slammed into Sarah, seizing her torso with a brutal twist. Thomas, his focus finally ripped from the camera, watched in horror as the water around Sarah erupted in a violent crimson cloud. His own body reacted instinctively. With a desperate surge, he swam towards her, a futile attempt at intervention against the primordial force thrashing just meters away. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the attack ceased. Disoriented and tasting blood, the great white released its mangled prey and disappeared back into the depths. Thomas reached Sarah's side, his own body thrumming with adrenaline. What remained of her was barely recognizable. Yet, miraculously, he detected a faint pulse. With the strength of desperation, fueled by the impossible hope that she might still cling to life, he pulled her toward the surface. Breaking through the waterline, Thomas screamed for help, his cries echoing across the lonely ocean. His vision blurred with a mix of tears and seawater. This idyllic reef was now stained with the violent evidence of their ordeal. A fishing vessel, thankfully within sight, responded to Thomas's frantic signals. Rough hands pulled them on board, the crew reacting with shock and grim pragmatism. They'd seen this kind of carnage before. Someone radioed ahead for emergency assistance while others attempted to stabilize Sarah's horrific injuries. There was little they could do but offer crude first aid and wait for the agonizingly slow journey back to shore. Clutching what remained of Sarah, Thomas could only pray for a miracle. Back on land, chaos awaited. Paramedics swarmed the dock, their faces grim as they assessed the extent of Sarah's wounds. She was alive, but barely. The race to the hospital became a blur of sirens and flashing lights. Inside its sterile walls, teams of doctors fought to salvage what they could. But the damage was too severe. The news of Sarah's death rippled through the tight-knit marine biology community and across South Africa. There was heartbreak, outrage, and fear. Sharks, already demonized, became the focus of renewed calls for culling and increased beach safety measures. For Thomas, the world had imploded. His Sarah, vibrant and passionate, was gone. In the aftermath, he was at the center of a media frenzy he didn't want. He gave statements, faced well-meaning but intrusive questions, and endured the public's insatiable appetite for details of the tragedy. Yet, all of it felt disconnected, a cruel performance that held no meaning amidst the gaping chasm of his grief. The Andaman Sea shimmered beneath them as the small boat sputtered towards a speck of green on the horizon. A group of 5 friends seeking adventure off the beaten path had chartered this less-than-reliable vessel and its weathered captain for the day. It was March 21st, 2009, and their Thailand vacation was about to take an unforgettable turn. At the helm of this motley crew was Luca, a seasoned traveler and outdoor enthusiast with a knack for finding hidden gems. Always up for a challenge, he'd convinced his friends to ditch the crowded resorts for this day trip to Koh Mani, a tiny uninhabited island that locals whispered about with a mix of awe and caution. With promises of deserted beaches and untouched coral reefs, he'd painted a picture of paradise. Naomi, his girlfriend, was a passionate photographer, always seeking that perfect shot. Then came Drake and Pamela, a British couple on their honeymoon, who'd struck up a friendship with Luca and Naomi while exploring Phuket's bustling markets. And finally, there was Andrea Ahrens, a marine biologist whose infectious enthusiasm about the ocean world had sparked their interest in this trip. Their morning had been idyllic. After a bumpy ride, they'd reached the island to find it lived up to its reputation. The beach was a crescent of pristine sand, the water dazzlingly clear. They'd spent hours swimming, building sandcastles with childlike glee and taking endless photos. Andrea had meticulously documented the colorful marine life while snorkeling on the reef, his face alight with discovery. It was early afternoon when Luca made a suggestion. He'd spotted a series of narrow inlets winding through the island's dense interior, like veins of turquoise water disappearing into the green. Curiosity piqued, and the friends agreed to explore. They clambered back on the creaky boat, venturing into the labyrinth. The further they went, the more the atmosphere changed. The mangroves closed in, their tangled roots obscuring the sunlight. The air grew heavy, almost stifling. At the helm, Luca had to navigate increasingly narrow passages, wincing with each scrape against the unforgiving vegetation. Then Andrea spotted something unsettling. Shapes flickered beneath the boat, darting in and out of the murky depths. Sharks. Luca had read that bull sharks were known to frequent these waters, drawn by the abundance of fish in the mangroves. Yet the thrill of discovery had outweighed caution. Seeing the powerful silhouettes circling their tiny vessel, their excitement turned to unease. The sense of foreboding grew heavier as they navigated the mangrove maze. Luca killed the engine, the sputtering replaced by an ominous silence broken only by the dripping of water and their increasingly anxious breathing. The sharks, seemingly sensing their vulnerability, grew bolder. One huge bull shark bumped the hull, sending a tremor through the boat. Panic crackled in the air, the friends huddling closer for a semblance of safety. Suddenly the boat lurched violently, throwing them off balance. The bull shark had rammed the side, its jaws snapping open in an unsuccessful attempt to overturn their craft. Terror fueled their movements as they frantically righted the boat, their hearts pounding against their ribs. Realization dawned: they were trapped. These channels were too shallow for the sharks to attack fully, but their retreat was cut off. It was a matter of time before the sharks' persistence or their carelessness led to disaster. Luca kicked the engine back to life, hoping to power through the dwindling waterway and reach a more comprehensive section where they might have a chance. The boat lurched forward, then ground to a halt, wedged against an unseen submerged root. They were stuck. Before they could react, the bull shark seized their opportunity. With a jarring impact, one slammed into the stern, cracking the fiberglass. Water rushed in, and the boat started to listen sickeningly. There was no time for deliberation. Luca yelled to abandon the ship, and they scrambled into the murky depths. Mangrove roots snagged at their clothes, threatening to entrap them. But the terror of the circling sharks propelled them further into the underwater labyrinth. Emerging into a slightly larger clearing, they gasped for breath. Drake pulled Pamela, a weak swimmer, onto a cluster of exposed roots while the rest treaded water. They scanned the channels desperately, but the boat had sunk, leaving no trace of their presence. Despair washed over them. They were isolated in this predator-infested maze. Luca, battling rising panic, tried to reason through their options. Swimming back towards the open ocean was a death sentence. He forced his mind to focus, drawing on all his survival knowledge. If they could reach higher ground in the island's interior, they could signal a passing boat or at least gain a better vantage point. The water around them churned ominously. The bull sharks, thwarted of their sinking feast, continued to patrol the channels. They moved as a group, keeping a vigilant watch below and above, and pressed deeper into the mangrove tangle. Luck, fleeting as it was, seemed to guide them. Stumbling upon a narrow, muddy slope, they scrambled up onto drier ground. Ahead, a densely forested hill rose, their only chance. Just as they were about to lose faith, a distant sputtering noise broke through the sound of the waves. A boat, an old rusted fishing vessel, was approaching the island, perhaps drawn by the faint wisps of smoke still spiraling from their pathetic fire. Frantically they fed the flames, the smoke growing thicker. From their vantage point in the trees, Andrea and Pamela waved their arms, their shouts mere whispers swallowed by the breeze. The boat seemed to hesitate, then change direction. It was coming towards their beach. Miraculously, the fishermen had spotted them. Within minutes, stern but kind faces were helping them into the boat, providing water and rough blankets. The ordeal was finally over. They had cheated death. The voyage back to the mainland was a blur of exhaustion and relief. But with each passing hour, the island of Koh Mani grew smaller on the horizon, a fading nightmare edged with the bittersweet taste of survival. As the bustling port came into view, signaling the return to civilization, they exchanged weary, knowing smiles. They'd faced the abyss and emerged unbroken, forever bonded by their shared trauma. The ocean would never again be a place of carefree joy. It was now tinged with respect, fear, and the bittersweet knowledge that nature's beauty masks a brutal struggle for existence. In 2002, on a bright summer afternoon at Clearwater Beach in Florida, tourists enjoyed a perfect day by the ocean. On July 5th, the beach was crowded with families, friends, and solo travelers, all eager to soak up the sun and surf. Clearwater Beach was known for its white sand and gentle waves, making it a popular vacation spot. Among the crowd were lifeguards Mike Johnson, a veteran with years of experience, and Jenna Taylor, a recruit eager to prove herself. They watched over the beachgoers from their tower, scanning the water for any signs of trouble. Nearby, marine biologist Dr. Eric Walters was taking a rare break from his research, enjoying the beach with his daughter Lily. The day started peacefully. Children built sandcastles, swimmers enjoyed the warm water, and surfers rode the gentle waves. Dr. Walters watched Lily play by the shore, watching her closely. Mike and Jenna monitored the scene, chatting and sharing stories. Everything seemed idyllic. Clearwater Beach was also home to various marine life, including dolphins, rays, and occasionally sharks. While shark sightings were rare, they were not unheard of. Most sharks in the area were harmless, but there was always the possibility of encountering a more aggressive species, such as the bull shark. As the afternoon progressed, a large group of swimmers ventured further into the water. Among them was a teenager named Alex Mitchell, who had visited the beach with his friends. They laughed and splashed, unaware of the danger lurking beneath the surface. Without warning, chaos erupted. A large fin sliced through the water, heading straight for the group. Panic spread as swimmers realized a shark was among them. Screams filled the air, and people began frantically swimming towards the shore. Mike and Jenna sprang into action, whistling and shouting for everyone to get out of the water. They grabbed their rescue boards and paddled towards the group, hearts pounding with fear and determination. The shark attacked with terrifying speed. Alex was the first to feel its bite, the pain searing through his leg. He screamed, blood mingling with the seawater. The shark, a giant bull shark, circled back for another attack. Mike reached Alex just in time, pulling him onto the rescue board and shielding him from the shark. Jenna helped other swimmers to safety, her eyes scanning for any signs of the predator. The water churned with panic and fear. Seeing the commotion, Dr. Walters ran to the lifeguard tower, offering his expertise. He knew bull sharks were among the most dangerous due to their aggressive nature and presence in shallow waters. With Alex bleeding heavily, Mike and Jenna knew they had to act fast. They paddled furiously towards the shore, the shark following closely. Jenna used her rescue board to fend off the shark, striking it as it came close. The beachgoers watched in horror, helpless to intervene. The shore seemed to take forever, but Mike and Jenna finally made it back with Alex. Lifeguards and volunteers rushed to help, pulling Alex out of the water and applying pressure to his wounds. The bull shark, undeterred, lingered just offshore, its dorsal fin cutting through the waves. The beach was quickly put on lockdown. Lifeguards ordered everyone out of the water and cleared the beach. Knowing the severity of the situation, Dr. Walters called his colleagues at the local Marine Research Center. They needed experts to identify and deal with the rogue shark. Alex was rushed to the nearest hospital, his leg badly injured, but his life was saved thanks to the quick actions of Mike and Jenna. The crowd on the beach was tense, whispers of fear and concern spreading among them. Parents held their children close, and vacationers huddled together, unsure what would happen next. Dr. Walters and his team arrived equipped with boats and tracking equipment. They planned to capture and relocate the shark if possible. They knew it was essential to act quickly before the shark attacked again. Mike, still shaken but determined, volunteered to help. His knowledge of the beach and its waters could prove invaluable. As the experts headed out, tension remained high on the beach. Vacationers watched anxiously, hoping for a resolution. The bull shark's aggressive behavior was unusual and posed a significant threat. The team deployed baited hooks and underwater cameras to track the shark's movements. Hours passed with no sign of the predator. As hope began to wane, the shark reappeared, drawn to the bait. The team acted swiftly, using nets and tranquilizers to subdue it. The struggle was intense, the shark thrashing violently, but eventually, they managed to secure it. Back on the beach, the crowd erupted in relief and cheers as word spread that the shark had been captured. The dangerous predator was to be relocated to a more remote area, far from human activity. Dr. Walters and his team ensured the shark was unharmed and transported to a safer environment. In the aftermath, Clearwater Beach slowly returned to normal. The lockdown was lifted, and swimmers cautiously returned to the water. Lifeguards increased their vigilance, patrolling the beach with renewed determination to keep everyone safe. Alex's recovery was slow but steady. He received countless messages of support and gratitude for his bravery. Mike and Jenna were hailed as heroes, and their quick actions saved lives. The community rallied together, and the ordeal strengthened their bond. The incident left a lasting impact. Beachgoers became more aware of the dangers lurking beneath the waves, and the importance of respecting marine life was emphasized. Dr. Walters continued his research, advocating for better understanding and coexistence with the ocean's predators. the submersible descended into the abyss, its lights piercing the murky depths of the Caribbean Sea off the Yucatan Peninsula. Inside the cramped sphere, 3 researchers sat hunched over controls and monitors. It was a humid July 15, 2003. But down here, the temperature held steady at a bone-chilling 4 degrees Celsius. Leading the team was Dr. Anya Castillo, a Mexican marine biologist whose childhood fascination with the ocean had turned into a lifelong passion. This expedition was the culmination of years of work. Sonar readings had revealed an extensive underwater cave system, untouched, its secrets a potential treasure trove of scientific data. Anya hoped to find new species, unique geological formations, maybe even clues about the ancient Maya civilization. Beside her was Kenji Tanaka, a brilliant but enigmatic Japanese engineer. He had designed their submersible specifically for this type of research. Small and agile, it could navigate tight spaces larger submersibles couldn't dream of reaching. Dr. Thomas Bennett, a brash American biologist specializing in shark behavior, was rounding out the team. Bull sharks in particular were known to frequent these waters, and Thomas's expertise would be vital if they encountered trouble. The day they had started with excitement and meticulous checks. Each piece of equipment had to function flawlessly, thousands of meters below the surface. Now they were explorers venturing into the unknown. The submersible's lights revealed a breathtaking spectacle. Stalactites dripped from the cavern ceilings. Schools of bioluminescent fish flickered through the darkness, and ancient rock formations hinted at untold geological history. As a child, Anya had dreamed of being an astronaut. This felt eerily similar, exploring a frontier just as alien to humans. Her pulse quickened with each discovery. They documented species never seen before and took core samples for geological analysis, Anya's heart singing with the thrill of it all. Then, Kenji's voice crackled over the speakers, his tone urgent. He pointed out a series of tremors on the seismic readout. Something down here was moving, and it was big. Thomas peered at the monitor, his tanned features turning pale. Those weren't random geological shifts. They had a pattern, a rhythm, almost like footsteps. Before he could voice his growing suspicion, the submersible lurched violently. A colossal shape had collided with them, its force throwing them against the walls. Panic flared, followed by a chilling realization. They were under attack. Outside, in the limited visibility, multiple shadowy forms circled. Bull sharks, dozens of them, drawn by the disturbance their presence had created. This pristine cave wasn't just a scientific wonder, but a hunting ground. Terror seized Anya as she realized the implications of the bull shark attack. Their sturdy submersible might withstand a single strike, but a relentless, coordinated assault was another matter. These predators were known for their aggression and persistence. They wouldn't give up until they claimed their prize. Kenji's face, set in grim determination, flicked through a series of emergency protocols. Their oxygen was alarmingly low. They'd planned for hours of exploration, not a siege within the caves. Thomas swore under his breath, his shark expertise proving useless behind the submersible's metal shell. Every sonar ping revealed more sharks joining the swarm outside, a tightening circle of predators. They had to do something, anything. Anya's mind raced, desperately trying to find a solution. Suddenly, she remembered the bioluminescent fish they'd observed earlier. Could those flickers of light be used as a distraction? She grabbed the microphone, outlining a risky plan. Switching off the submersible's external lights, they navigated with minimal instrument illumination, relying on memory and sonar to guide them deeper into the cave system. The sharks, confused by the sudden darkness, dispersed somewhat. Then, Kenji activated a release mechanism, flooding the surrounding area with the bioluminescent plankton they'd collected earlier. The water erupted in an explosion of shimmering light. Instinctively drawn to the disturbance, the sharks swarmed toward the glowing cloud. Taking the opportunity, Kenji gunned the submersible's engines, maneuvering them through a narrow passageway the bulky sharks couldn't reach. For a few precious moments, they were clear, but their reprieve was short-lived. Some sharks, sensing the trick, returned their focus to the submersible. The attacks resumed, each impact sending tremors through the craft and draining its dwindling power. Anya calculated their oxygen reserves, the numbers flashing like a death sentence in her mind. Just when despair seemed inevitable, The sonar picked up a faint signal. Another passageway, too narrow for the sharks, snaked upwards. Their only hope was to bet on it being a shortcut back to the open ocean. Yet there was no guarantee the passage wasn't a dead end, trapping them even further with no chance of escape. It was a desperate gamble, but they had no choice, with death snapping at their heels. Kenji piloted the submersible upwards, its metal hull scraping against ancient rock. Anya held her breath, every creak and groan amplified by the unbearable tension. Then, a glimmer of light. The passage opened into a vast, shallow cavern. Frantically, Kenji maneuvered them towards the opening. Just as the first bull shark managed to squeeze through, they burst into the open water. They surfaced amidst a storm, the rain a welcome contrast to the claustrophobic nightmare below. A Coast Guard vessel, alerted to their emergency beacon, was just minutes away. As they were hauled on board, Anya looked back at the churning waters, the entrance to the underwater caves barely more than a ripple in the endless sea. Back on dry land, the ordeal felt surreal. News of their miraculous survival made headlines, but the near-death experience had left its mark. Thomas was haunted by the knowledge that bull sharks, usually solitary hunters, had shown signs of pack-like behavior during the attack. It hinted at intelligence far more disturbing than random animal aggression. Anya grappled with the guilt of venturing into the unknown, of disturbing an ecosystem humans were never meant to enter. Ever the stoic, Kenji hid his trauma behind a meticulous analysis of every data point, determined to build a better, safer submersible for the future. The ocean depths still held their secrets, but their allure was forever tainted with shadows. For the survivors, the allure of discovery now came with a heavy dose of respect and just a touch of fear for the raw, unpredictable power of the natural world. The turquoise waters surrounding the Virgin Islands shimmered as the sun peaked midday. On board a tiny but sturdy sailboat, Zara and Ben were the picture of young love. They embarked on this sailing trip on July 25, 2007, to celebrate their second anniversary. Both avid adventurers planned a week-long exploration of the hidden coves and secluded beaches that dotted the Caribbean archipelago. Zara, a passionate marine conservationist on a break from her studies, was especially eager for glimpses of the vibrant marine life this region was known for. Ben, a photographer with a keen eye and a slightly goofy spirit, was her perfect complement. His love for Zara was as boundless as the ocean they sailed upon. While she possessed a quiet intensity, he brought lightheartedness and laughter to their shared journey. Their days had been filled with swimming in hidden coves, hiking lush island trails, and stargazing on deck, lulled by the rhythm of the waves. It seemed like paradise. Their bond has deepened out here, away from the rush of their city lives. Ben loved watching Zara as she scanned the horizon with excitement, her dark curls whipping in the sea breeze. Zara adored his endless curiosity and his attempts to capture the perfect shot of a dolphin leaping through the waves. Today, they were promised to be just as idyllic, a day trip to a small island further north known for its coral reefs before circling back to their home base that evening. They'd set off early, a picnic basket packed with fresh fruit and sandwiches, laughter filling the air as they charted their route. Zara reveled in the feeling of the wind in the sails, Ben steering with quiet confidence. They'd seen the telltale clouds in the distance, but these Caribbean squalls often blew over as quickly as they appeared. The storm hit with shocking speed. The wind whipped the sea into a churning froth, tearing at the sails. The once steady boat pitched violently. Clinging to the railing, Zara felt a knot of fear twist in her gut. Ben wrestled with the wheel, his face etched with concentration. But nature's fury was relentless. A colossal wave smashed into the side of the boat. The force of the impact ripped the mast clean off, sending it crashing into the water like a felled tree. Zara was thrown overboard, her cries swallowed by the storm's roar. Ben, in a desperate lunge, managed to grab her hand, but the surging sea was too mighty, their grip too weak. As Zara plunged into the swirling darkness below, her last sight was Ben's horror-stricken face. Disoriented and choking, Zara thrashed her way back to the surface. The storm still raged, the rain stinging her eyes. In the chaos of churning waves, she spotted a sliver of wood, the shattered remains of their boat. Gasping for air, she managed to haul herself onto the splintered debris. A wave slammed into her, almost washing her off again. Her muscles screamed in protest, but fear fueled her desperate attempts to stay afloat. Ben surfaced nearby, frantically searching for any sign of Zara. Relief washed over him as he saw her gripping the piece of wreckage. With a surge of strength, he swam against the angry sea, reaching her side. They clung to each other, a lifeline of human touch amidst the vast, lonely ocean. As the storm gradually subsided, the horrifying reality of their situation settled in. Their boat was gone, land was nowhere in sight, and they were adrift in waters that were teeming with sharks. Despite her conservationist knowledge, Zara had never confronted the stark power of these predators up close. Now the fear was primal, a gnawing dread chilling her far more than the ocean spray. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Within hours, their throats were parched and their skin burned. A small waterproof container bobbed nearby, the remnants of their picnic supplies. Zara fished it out, revealing a few waterlogged crackers and a bruised apple. They rationed the meager sustenance carefully, knowing it might have to last them days. The night had descended, bringing a fresh wave of terror. They could sense movement in the depths below, shadows circling ominously beneath the wreckage. At first it was subtle bumps and nudges, unsettling but survivable. Then a shark lunged, its teeth tearing into their makeshift raft. They scrambled back as the predator thrashed, tearing off chunks of wood that narrowed their already precarious haven. The next day he brought relentless heat and circling sharks. Ben tried creating a crude spear from a broken oar and a piece of metal, but the sharks were cunning, staying outside his desperate jabs. His frustration grew with each missed attack. Zara fought back tears. Her conservationist's heart rebelled at the cruelty of their situation, the stark reality of the ocean's food chain. Dehydration set in, bringing hallucinations and despair, and time lost all meaning. With every passing hour, their hopes of rescue dwindled. Yet their will to survive, fueled by desperate love for each other, flickered stubbornly. Zara found herself drawing strength from Ben's quiet determination. He, in turn, was inspired by Zara's unwavering belief that they would endure. On the third night, a faint light appeared on the horizon. It was a cargo ship, veered off course, now alerted to the chance of survivors following the storm. It felt like a miracle. They summoned their dwindling energy, waving frantically. But the ship kept its trajectory. Despair threatened to drown them. Then Zara remembered the waterproof flares they kept in the now sunken boat. Dividing their last sips of precious water, she forced herself to dive under the debris, desperately searching the boat's overturned shell. She resurfaced minutes later, clutching the flare canister. Igniting the flare, it sputtered and sparked, spewing scarlet light across the darkening sky. The change in the ship's course was almost immediate. Searchlights swept the water, homing in on the tiny spark of hope. Their ordeal wasn't over, but as rough hands dragged them on board, a wave of relief washed over them. Against all odds, they had survived. They had stared into the abyss of the ocean's indifference, felt the breath of predators, and defied death itself. They would never again look at the sea or each other with the same eyes. In 1997, Emma Fisher, an experienced scuba diver and marine photographer, found herself at the Belize Barrier Reef. The sun was high, casting a golden glow over the crystal-clear waters. Emma had traveled far and wide, capturing the beauty of underwater life. But the Belize Barrier Reef was extraordinary. It was one of the world's most extensive and vibrant coral reefs. With her camera equipment ready, Emma suited up and plunged into the warm Caribbean waters. As she descended, the world above disappeared, replaced by a mesmerizing underwater paradise. Colorful corals of every shape and size decorated the seabed, and schools of fish darted around her, creating a living rainbow. Emma's mission was to capture the essence of the reef. Still, she also hoped for a rare encounter with a magnificent marine creature. She swam deeper, her eyes scanning every nook and cranny. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. There, gliding gracefully through the water, was a magnificent swordfish. Its long, sharp bill and sleek body shimmered in the sunlight that filtered through the water. Excited by sight, Emma carefully adjusted her camera and followed the swordfish. She moved slowly, making sure not to startle it. The swordfish swam calmly at first, seemingly unaware of Emma's presence. She captured shot after shot, each one more breathtaking than the last. The swordfish's powerful movements and the way it sliced through the water were mesmerizing. As Emma drew closer, the swordfish seemed to notice her. It paused for a moment, its large eyes locking onto her. Emma's heart pounded, but she remained focused on her task. She needed just a few more close-up shots to complete her collection. However, the swordfish suddenly changed its demeanor. It felt threatened by Emma's persistent presence, so it charged at her with incredible speed without warning. Emma barely had time to react as the swordfish's sharp bill pierced her diving equipment, causing a sharp pain in her side. Bubbles erupted from her punctured gear, and panic set in. Emma's mind raced. She had to fend off the swordfish and return to the surface before her air supply ran out. The swordfish wasn't giving up. It charged at her again, and Emma barely dodged its sharp bill. Her breathing became rapid and shallow as fear gripped her. She knew she had to act fast. Emma tried to push the swordfish away using her camera as a shield. The swordfish, relentless in its aggression, continued to attack. Emma's vision blurred with each movement, and her strength was waning. She kicked hard, trying to distance herself from the relentless predator. In her struggle, Emma's thoughts drifted to her family and friends. She couldn't let this be the end. She had to survive. Gathering her remaining strength, Emma reached for her emergency flare. She pulled the trigger and a bright, blinding light erupted from the flare. The swordfish, startled by the sudden burst of light, retreated momentarily. This was Emma's chance. She kicked her legs with all her might, propelling herself upward. The surface seemed so far away, but she couldn't give up. Every second counted, and her air supply was dwindling fast. Emma's injured side throbbed with pain, but she pushed through it, focusing on the light above. As she ascended, she glanced back to see the swordfish still lurking below, but it no longer pursued her. Emma's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. She had to make it to the surface. She had to survive. As Emma neared the surface, her lungs burned for fresh air. She broke through the water, gasping and coughing, the salty air filling her lungs. She floated on her back momentarily, allowing herself to catch her breath. The sun's warmth on her face was a comforting reminder that she had made it. But she wasn't safe yet. Her diving equipment was damaged and her side was bleeding. She needed to get back to her boat. Emma spotted her small boat anchored not far away. Summoning her remaining strength, she swam toward it, each movement sending a sharp pain through her side. Reaching the boat, Emma grabbed onto the side and hauled herself up with great effort. She collapsed onto the deck, breathing heavily. The reality of what had just happened sank in, and she felt relief and gratitude. She was alive. Emma knew she needed to tend to her wound. She rummaged through her emergency kit, finding some bandages and antiseptic. The cut wasn't deep, but it was painful. She cleaned and bandaged it as best as she could. The adrenaline wore off, and she felt exhausted but couldn't rest. She needed to get back to shore and get proper medical attention. Emma started the boat's engine and navigated back towards the marina. The ride was slow and bumpy, but she focused on returning safely. The beautiful scenery of the reef that had once filled her with wonder now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the harrowing experience. Back at the marina, Emma was greeted by concerned faces. Her colleagues and the marina staff rushed to help her as she docked the boat. They listened in shock as she recounted her encounter with the aggressive swordfish. They helped her out of the ship and guided her to a nearby clinic. The doctor examined her wound, reassuring her that she would be okay with some rest and proper care. Emma felt a wave of relief. She had survived a terrifying ordeal and would live to tell the tale. Emma's story spread throughout the diving community in the days that followed. Many were amazed at her bravery and resilience. She reviewed the photos she had taken before the attack. They were some of the most stunning shots she had ever captured, a testament to the beauty and danger of the underwater world. Emma decided to use her experience as a lesson for others. She shared her story at diving seminars and workshops, emphasizing the importance of respecting marine life and being prepared for unexpected dangers. Her near-death experience had given her a new perspective on life and a renewed appreciation for the delicate balance of nature. Although the encounter had been terrifying, Emma didn't let it deter her from her passion. Once fully recovered, she returned to the water, more cautious but equally determined to continue her work. The ocean was her home. She knew she could coexist with its magnificent creatures with respect and care. The swordfish, still roaming the depths of the Belize Barrier Reef, remained a reminder of the wild and unpredictable nature of the sea. Emma's story was a powerful reminder to all divers always to be vigilant and respectful of the marine world. In 2006, off the coast of South Africa, a team of marine biologists set out on a mission to tag great white sharks. The location was known as Shark Alley near Gansbaai, famous for its dense population of these formidable predators. On September 18th, the team prepared for their day with excitement and caution. They aimed to study great white sharks' movements and behaviors to understand better and protect them. The team consisted of Dr. Laura Phillips, a renowned marine biologist, and the project leader, Michael Ross, an expert diver, Karen Mills, the tech specialist responsible for the tagging equipment, and Tom Blake, a seasoned boat captain. The day began early, with a stunning sunrise casting a golden glow over the ocean. They loaded their research vessel, Marine Explorer, with all the necessary gear and set off towards Shark Alley. The waters around Gansbaai were notorious for their shark activity. Great white sharks, known for their size and power, often reach lengths of up to 20 feet. They were apex predators, feared and respected for their hunting prowess. The team had tagged many sharks before, but knew each expedition carried risks. The sea was calm and the weather was perfect. Spirits were high as the team joked and talked about their plans. Dr. Phillips briefed them on the day's objectives, emphasizing safety and precision. They had high hopes of tagging several sharks and gathering valuable data. As they approached Shark Alley, the team spotted the telltale signs of shark activity: seals darting through the water and large shadows beneath the surface. They anchored the boat and prepared the bait to attract the sharks. Karen set up the tagging equipment, ensuring everything was ready when they encountered their first shark. It didn't take long for the first great white to appear. A large dorsal fin broke the surface, moving steadily towards the boat. The team sprang into action, their training and experience guiding their movements. Michael readied the tagging pole and Dr. Phillips monitored the shark's approach. This shark was massive, more significant than any they had seen before. It circled the boat, its eyes fixed on the bait. Michael waited for the right moment, then expertly tagged the shark on its dorsal fin. The shark thrashed but soon calmed, swimming away with the new tag securely in place. The team cheered, their first success of the day. They continued their work, tagging 2 more sharks without incident. The day was going smoothly and they were pleased with their progress. But then, as they prepared to tag a 4th shark, something went wrong. A massive great white, far more aggressive than the others, approached the boat. Its size was intimidating, and its behavior was erratic. The shark rammed the boat with incredible force, causing it to lurch violently. Equipment fell, and the team struggled to maintain their footing. Michael attempted to tag the shark, but it attacked again, damaging the boat's hull. Water began to seep in, and the situation quickly turned dire. Panic set in as the team realized the severity of their predicament. The boat was taking on water, and the aggressive shark showed no signs of retreating. Dr. Phillips took charge, her calm demeanor masking her fear. She instructed Karen to check the damage and assess their options for repair. The shark continued its assault, circling the boat and striking it repeatedly. Each hit sent shock waves through the vessel, worsening the damage. Tom tried to start the engine, hoping to move the ship to safer waters, but the impact had caused mechanical issues. They were stranded in Shark Alley with a relentless predator. Karen reported that the hull breach was significant but potentially fixable if they could stabilize the boat. The team worked quickly, using whatever materials they had to patch the hole and stop the water from flooding. Michael and Tom took turns keeping an eye on the shark, ready to fend it off if it attacked again. The shark circled closer, its movements aggressive and unpredictable. It rammed the boat again, causing more damage. Michael grabbed a spear, prepared to defend his colleagues. As the shark lunged, he struck its snout, temporarily deterring it. The shark recoiled, circling wider but remaining a threat. Dr. Phillips coordinated their efforts, urging them to stay focused. Karen and Tom worked tirelessly on the repairs, their hands moving quickly and efficiently. The water level inside the boat was rising and time was running out. Every minute counted. Suddenly the shark attacked from below, hitting the boat with such force that it nearly capsized. Michael lost his balance and fell into the water. Fear gripped the team as they watched him struggle to stay afloat, the shark's shadow looming beneath him. Dr. Phillips grabbed a rope and threw it to Michael, who clung to it desperately. The shark lunged at Michael, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his leg. He kicked hard, using all his strength to avoid the predator. The team pulled him back onto the boat, his face pale with fear and exhaustion. The shark's relentless pursuit left them no time to rest. Karen and Tom finally patched the hull, slowing the influx of water. But the boat's engine was still malfunctioning, and they needed to get it running. Tom worked on the engine, his hands shaking with urgency. Dr. Phillips kept watch, her eyes never leaving the shark. The predator's attacks grew more frantic, as if sensing their vulnerability. It rammed the boat again, but the patch held. Now armed with a spear gun, Michael aimed at the shark, ready to protect his team. He fired, hitting the shark's side. The shark thrashed in pain, giving them a brief respite. Tom managed to get the engine sputtering to life. With a collective sigh of relief, the team prepared to move. The shark, though injured, continued to circle, its aggression unabated. Dr. Phillips directed them toward the nearest shore, a small island visible in the distance. As they moved, the shark followed, a dark shadow beneath the water. Michael kept his weapon ready, eyes scanning for any sign of another attack. The journey was tense, every second filled with dread. They knew they were not safe yet. Finally, they reached the island, beaching the boat on the sandy shore. Exhausted and shaken, the team stumbled onto land, grateful to be alive. The shark circled offshore, its fins slicing through the water. They had escaped its immediate threat, but the ordeal was far from over. They assessed the damage and their supplies. The boat was in bad shape and needed to be repaired more. They set up a makeshift camp, using what they had to create a safe space. Dr. Phillips contacted the mainland, relaying their situation and requesting assistance. As night fell, the team huddled together, their fear mingling with relief. They had survived the shark's relentless attacks, but the memory of its power and aggression lingered. They knew they had faced a formidable predator that tested their limits and resolve. The following day, help arrived in a rescue boat sent from the mainland. The team was airlifted to safety, and their ordeal was finally over. They were hailed as heroes, and their story of survival was a testament to their bravery and teamwork. The collected data and the tags they deployed provided valuable insights into excellent white shark behavior. Despite the dangers, their mission had been a success. They had faced the ocean's most feared predator and emerged stronger for it. Back on land, they reflected on their experience, grateful for their lives and shared bond. The shark tagging expedition had gone wrong, revealing their resilience and unbreakable spirit.